Hey, everybody, Dr. Grant here. And today we are going to be talking about specifically pretty much the top ADHD supplements that are backed by real lab testing data that I've done over years. I've done over, 11,000 different lab testing on patients of mine that have ADHD or symptoms of ADHD that really struggle and are trying to find what is the best stack, what are the best supplements. And you have to really look at the individual and look at the different lab testing to find the deficiencies. But I'm going to give you a pattern. So maybe this could be helpful for you to really see patterns that I've seen of doing all these different lab tests. And the first one, we'll start with the most common thing that people always ask about is dopamine. So with dopamine, if you've been on my previous live streams, when I test people, what we do is we find about 48% are low in dopamine specifically. So it's still a big amount, but it's not as big as everyone thinks it is. Everyone thinks that people with ADHD have low dopamine, but it's about 48% of the people that we do test. Okay. So with that in mind, when we see this, what we do typically are want to supplement is something like mucuna purines because it has L-DOPA in it. And you see L-DOPA helps directly help improve dopamine, helps make dopamine. So that's something that usually we will add if we do see dopamine levels are low. Now, another thing that we do need to also address to help improve dopamine are a few things. One is that we do need to address, for example, the cofactor, the main cofactor that helps build and make dopamine. Okay. Stimulant medication are usually what turns on the faucet, is what is a driver to allow more dopamine to release in the body and the brain, but it doesn't make it. So people think that stimulant medication is what make dopamine. No, it just like opens up the faucet. So when you run out, there it becomes an issue. So we have to look at the things that help make the dopamine. And so P5P, so you can supplement this, is the activated form of vitamin B6. And the reason why it's so critical, it is a cofactor process in every step of the way of helping making dopamine. That's why it's so critical. Another one that I love using is L-theanine, because L-theanine can cross the blood-brain barrier and help improve dopamine levels. So I do love L-theanine, another great supplement. And so I probably, for the most part, usually recommend L-theanine probably about 98% of the time, because it's actually more useful. It is useful for not just dopamine, but several other things as well. Now, P5P, vitamin B6, usually 60% of the time, we will see people low in vitamin B6. So a lot of times we'll be recommending that. Now, let's look at some other things that also contribute to your ADHD symptoms. And that is, one is this right here, this excitatory neurotransmitter known as phenylalanine. Now, if you are watching this, 90% of the people that I've tested over the years are low in phenylalanine. So there's a very high likely chance that you're probably also low in this as well. So what do we do? What are the things that can we do? And why is this so important? Because it's an excitatory neurotransmitter that helps with motivation, focus, memory. So it's important, right? That it's impacting your ADHD. And I would say this is one of the bigger culprits than dopamine itself, right? So what are the supplements that we can be implementing to help improve this? There's a few things. One is DL-phenylalanine is a big one. You could directly supplement phenylalanine. Also, another one that to look at that helps make dopamine is tyrosine. So tyrosine, just like this patient, is low. About 52% of the people that we do test tends to be low in tyrosine. Now, why is that important? Because tyrosine helps make dopamine. So think about just ingredients. There are certain ingredients, so things like tyrosine, L-DOPA, phenylalanine, all these things are ingredients to helping making dopamine and also helping making phenylalanine. So we've got to make sure that we have enough ingredients to consistently be making dopamine for ourselves. And that's what impacts our ADHD a lot, to not have motivation, focus, and drive. So I usually like using N-L-tyrosine. It's more easily absorbable. Our body utilizes it better. So that's something I will supplement. And 52% of the people that we do test tend to be low and deficient in that. Okay. Now, what about as far as when it comes to if you're low in everything? Because if you're low in everything, not everything, but like all the things that we've already talked about. So like this patient, low in phenylalanine, tyrosine, dopamine, norepinephrine, epinephrine, right? The whole pathway process. So what if I see this pattern, the one that I like to go to is this supplement right here, Dopatone Active, because Dopatone Active has everything that I do need to resolve all these deficiencies. So, like we've talked about, it has vitamin B6 in it. It has quinoperines in it. It has D-L-phenylalanine in it. It has acetyl-L-tyrosine in it. It also has NAC in it, which also helps with neurotransmitters processing and building modulating. So I like that. It does have alpha lipoic acid, which also helps with neurotransmitter processing. So it has all the things that I do need when I see a patient like this. Now, I will tell you probably maybe about 20% of the time I will see it like this. So it's not like um, very common, but enough to where, it definitely raises concerns. And I like this stack because they only take one supplement and it kind of addresses a lot of these different things. Okay. Now, what about the opposite? So everybody thinks low dopamine, but what about the opposite? So you can see this patient right here, their dopamine levels were elevated. What does that mean for you? What does the experiences that people usually will have when this is happening? Well, usually they'll feel more agitated, irritated, heart palpitations. It's just not a good situation to be in. And typically, this will happen is because you're on medication, certain medication, and it's making symptoms worse. So that might be you. Let me know in the chat if you do experience this, because if that's the case, because what I found from testing this, it's not huge, but it is enough to raise concern. About 10% of the time, we will see elevated dopamine levels. Okay. So definitely needs to be addressed. And what to do to fix this, as far as when we're just looking at just supplements, there's a few things. One, L-theanine can help lower it. Now, I did just mention that L-theanine helps improve dopamine. It's a great neutralizer. That's why I like L-theanine. That's why I recommend it a lot. It just helps balance and neutralize it. Rhodiola is another one that can help lower if there's high dopamine levels. But two other things that usually could be the reason of why dopamine is also elevated, not necessarily because it's of a high stimulant medication that you're taking, but a lot of times that is the case. But there's other reasons. Is because the breakdown, so this process right here, the breakdown of dopamine, which is necessary. You don't want to have high dopamine level all the time. It needs to be broken down and utilized to making things like norepinephrine, epinephrine, and just exiting the system. We always want to build and break down. Okay. So when we see that, typically what happens is this right here is vitamin B3 might be low or SAMe. So we will supplement both SAMe and vitamin B3 if we see those levels are low. So those are great supplements to help this process if you're in that state. Okay. I didn't want to answer this question right here. Daryl, hopefully you're still here. Are we taking on new patients? We are. I'll get that to in a minute, but if you want to, for anybody that is interested, I'll just drop the link here where you can book your first appointment with me. So that is in the chat or in the description. Okay. So next one here is right here is serotonin. So serotonin is actually a bigger problem than we see than dopamine being an issue. So with serotonin, let me just make sure I got my stats right here. So for over the years of lab testing, on average, we typically will see 66% of people low in serotonin of the people that we've tested. That's high, right? And why would we see this with people with ADHD or just people that struggle with motivation, focus, and drive, right? Because serotonin is responsible for motivation too. It's not just for our happiness and mood, and it just contribute to just feeling depressed. But hey, when you feel depressed, you're not very motivated either, right? So definitely needs to be addressed. So what do we do when we see this? So the supplements we can use that can be really effective when we see these levels are low is tryptophan, right? So tryptophan can help make serotonin. We can use 5-HTP, so that's even closer, directly helping making serotonin. Also, L-theanine and rhodiola both also help improve serotonin levels. Okay, so those are like ones that are really, really effective that I like using when it comes to serotonin. Now, what about if they're spiked? This is what we call serotonin syndrome. So just like when dopamine is elevated, serotonin can also be elevated. And this is where it gets really bad with serotonin syndrome. You can hallucinate, have high anxiety, have bipolar symptoms, like where your like mood is just all over the place. It's just not a good situation to be in. I've seen it. Um, and typically what we do see is about 20% of the people who we've tested we will see elevated serotonin levels. So what do we do in this state? So similar to when we see high dopamine, it's because things are not being broken down, or it's because you're on an SSRI and too high of a dose, and it's causing the serotonin syndrome. So you got to be really careful with that. And you certainly wouldn't want to be taking any of these supplements right here if you have elevated levels of serotonin, because that can cause the serotonin syndrome as well. So you just got to be really careful. This is why testing is so important, to see what are the imbalances and knowing which type of supplementation is going to be the best, right? So right here, where was I? Yeah, right here. So just like similar to high dopamine, uh, serotonin also needs to be broken down. And typically what's responsible for that, and what we do see, there's several things like vitamin B2, B3, iron, but typically the problem that I see, and also SAMe, is usually these two things. That when we are testing for these, we typically will see vitamin B3 levels being low and SAMe, so we'll supplement those to help break it down to get into more healthier, balanced state, to get them out of the serotonin syndrome state. Okay. Now, and there's a lot of information, but I'm trying to give you guys a very good broad of like averages that we do see when we're testing people, and what we typically supplement that are really the top ADC supplements that have been really effective for our patients when working with them. So here, GABA is another really big culprit to imbalances and that contribute to anxiety and focus issues for your ADHD. So when we're testing for GABA, like you can see in this patient right here, when we've tested over the years with GABA, we see about 38% will be low in GABA. 38%. It's a pretty big amount. When you have low GABA levels, you're going to feel more anxious and more stressed and can't manage stress. And so that's going to impact your focus. It's going to cause burnout, which I'm sure, let me know in the chat. Do you guys get burnout? Let me know in the chat, because most people I work with tend to have that, reach that burnout state, because we work with adults with ADHD, and so typically that's what we do see. So in this case, but there's few other things like glutamate and glycine. Those things are really low. So like glutamate is really helps make the GABA levels, and so with glutamate, we do see when we've tested over the years, 18% on average that we'll see as low, and then as far as glycine, it's actually 30% that we'll see that are low in glycine. So definitely something to be aware of, and could be a high like chance that you also have these issues. So what we do here as far as supplementing it, you can directly supplement GABA. You could also, so you're going to supplement L-glutamine as well as glycine if you're low in those different areas. Also, L-theanine does help with improved GABA levels too. So just to be aware of that. Now, what about the opposite? So the opposite also could cause pretty much similar symptoms. So you always want a good balance in everything. So, but when GABA levels are too high, just like this patient, and typically when we see that about 28% of the time when we're testing, about 28% of the people we've tested had high levels of GABA. So also not a good state, and it also can impact your focus as well. So in this case, when we're looking at that, also L-theanine is helpful for this. So if you can see a theme with L-theanine, it's just a good neutralizer. So if anything's low on any of the neurotransmitters, it'll help improve it, increase it. If anything's too high, it'll help lower it. That's why I love L-theanine, and that's why I say I recommend it probably like 98% of the time. It's just one of those very powerful supplements that I tend to recommend. Okay. All right, and then a few more things, and then don't worry, we'll get into Q&A questions. So go and put your questions in the chat for me. This is actually a lot longer training. I just have so much stuff to go over, so I didn't realize this training was going to go so long. So the next thing here is histamine and taurine. These are both help build and modulate all the different types of neurotransmitters. So it's really important. So I will supplement both histine and also taurine. And just to give you kind of stats on this, taurine we'll see 32% or low in it. And then as far as histamine, it's pretty high actually, 64%. We will see tends to be low in histamine. Okay, so we'll definitely want to supplement those, and those can be really helpful. And then this one's a big one. Okay, so you saw the thumbnail. 92% of you guys need this. 92%. So you saw that on the thumbnail. So because 92% of you guys, when we test, are low in cortisol. And so what do we do to help improve that? Usually it needs to be some kind of adrenal support, adrenal desicate, adrenal bovine, something for at least about 3 months, where depending on where you're low and where we're tested, we want to be taking the supplements around those times. Okay. Now, I always want to talk about the opposite because also we do see where it spikes. And when it spikes, we see about 22% where cortisol levels will be spiked. And this does impact focus, motivation, drive. Also, even the low impacts focus, motivation, drive. So what we do here is I like using something called Cortisol Manager because it has ashwagandha in it. It has magnolia in it, all these things that help lower cortisol. So that's what I will use. But this is why it's so important to test. You don't want to use this if your cortisol levels are too low because then it'll give you the opposite effect and vice versa, right? So that's where we would put it, is where we see it spiked. Okay. So hopefully this is helpful to you. Let me know in the chat. Was this helpful? This help clarify things as far as what are the top supplements that for you to start looking into. And I guess a lot of information. So like if you would like me to order lab testing, because like that's really what it comes down to is like lab testing specifically for you and find the root causes to your ADHD issues. I'd love to help you out. Basically, all you gotta do is just click on the link in the description below to book your ADHD focused diagnostic session with me. That's the very first step. It's where we dive deeper into your medical history. And this helps me determine and create a roadmap of what labs we need to be implementing in an action plan. It's a 45-minute session with me. So you click on that link in the description below to book that. And I thank you guys for attending, and I'll see you guys on the next live stream. Thanks.